I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Kathy from the Kindergarten Kiosk Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect those of others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Other thing that I will definitely tell all educators right now, and from here on out, is less is more. I am sick and tired of seeing homework that is 25 questions.
Yes. Amen.
Why are you giving students that much homework?
And you're giving yourself that much work, right?
Yeah. If don't give anything out as homework that you're not ready to grade and turn around on the spot for every single one of your students with appropriate and timely feedback.
Welcome to the Burned In Teacher Podcast. I'm Amber Harper, and the educators on this podcast are brave enough to share their stories of burnout with the world. On BIT, we get real, we get honest, and we take action. Action against the burnout with stories from burned out teachers, advice from experts, and actionable steps you can take today to beat the burnout and become a happier, more fulfilled human being. Let's get started. You know, during my 12-year teaching career, it seemed like there was always something throwing off my lesson plans, mindset, or goals. And when I began to burn out and tried to talk about it, all I heard was join the club, go for a walk, have a glass or 3 of wine. This is just the way it is. The current challenges you're facing, distance learning, new technologies, higher expectations, discipline issues, a personal crisis, a global pandemic, all of these challenges make your everyday life seem unmanageable. Until now. Teacher burnout has been hacked, and the book is here. In Hacking Teacher Burnout, I share my 8-step process that shines a light on burnout as an opportunity for growth and change. And in it, I empower you to become burned in, a fulfilled, happy, efficient, and effective teacher in the classroom and in life. You'll learn the steps you can take to take action steps based on your burnout type. Feel ready for the next challenge. Thrive, not just survive, personally and professionally. Feel ready for and learn how to grow through your burnout, and so much more. Hacking Teacher Burnout is here and ready for you to order on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com, so go check it out. Or go to hackingteacherburnout.com to learn more and place a bulk order for your staff. Take a deep breath because you're about ready to do something big for your burnout. Burn on. Well, hello there, Burned In teachers. How you doing? Welcome to the Burned In Teacher Podcast. My name is Amber and I am your host, and this is one part burnout and all other parts action, inspiration, and support for teachers dealing with burnout. This is episode 87, and I'm so excited to share with you my interview with Gabriele Carrillo. He's an educational technology specialist that lives in San Antonio, Texas. He is the creator and host of the EdTech Bites Podcast that is so incredibly entertaining and informative. And he's an EdTech presenter who has presented at various conferences and more than anything, loves cooking with and for his family. And you'll hear us talk about that a little bit here in this episode. Now, I asked Gabriele to come on to the show because I have heard a lot of you out there talking about how challenging it is to get your students engaged, as well as wondering how it is that you can grade from a distance, virtually or hybrid teaching, how it is that you can lighten your workload, not have so much to do. And Gabriele is a fellow Education Podcast Network podcaster. And when I put this question out to the network and said, hey, could anybody come onto my podcast and talk to me about ways that teachers can simplify using educational technology? Now, you know me, I love educational technology. However, unfortunately, I don't get to work with teachers on a daily basis in a school to see exactly what it is that can help them directly in a school setting while teaching remotely or in a hybrid. So I wanted to get somebody in here who has daily experience working with teachers, and Gabriele delivered. So in this episode, he's going to share with us some strategies and tips and tools that you can use to engage your students, as well as how you can make things more simple for yourself. As you heard in the soundbite, Gabriele believes that when we ask students to do a lot of work, we make a lot of work for ourselves and sometimes double the work, especially if we are assigning a lot of homework that students clearly don't understand. Now, what I love about this conversation is we don't just talk about educational technology and how to make things simpler with that technology for yourself and to engage your students. We also talk about his challenges with burnout, how he can tell it's coming on, and what he does about it. I love this part of our conversation so much because he has created for himself strategies and awareness around burnout. And he knows that he will get through it because he's empowered himself to believe that it's just a season and that when you have the right strategies, you can get through it. So without further ado, here is my interview with Gabriele Carrillo. Let's dive in. Gabriele, thank you so much for joining us on the Burned In Teacher podcast today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to be here.
Me too. So tell us a little bit about you, your teaching background, and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. My name is Gabriele Carrillo. I'm an instructional technology specialist here in San Antonio, Texas. I serve in a very large district that has over 60,000 students, about 65, 66 campuses, including some virtual and magnet programs and things like that. And I currently support a middle school, 2 high schools, and within the middle school and the high school, they have several magnet programs within those campuses. So I do that. I'm a father of 2, husband, and I also host a podcast, just
Yes.
like you do.
Yeah, you do. It's so entertaining. I was listening to some episodes the other day, and I love your twist on the EdTech Bites. You have very good sound bites. That's a lot of bites in one sentence.
It's a lot to chew, no pun intended. Right?
So, Gabriele, did you always want to be a teacher?
I wanted to be a teacher. It's funny. I told this story to my kids and my wife not too long ago, but I knew in 2nd grade that I wanted to be a teacher.
Really? So
yes,
why?
I could vividly recall, it was a brisk spring morning. Now I was in the class. We were sitting on the carpet doing carpet time, whatever you want to call it. And the teacher, actually a male teacher, my first male teacher, which was in 2nd grade, asked the class, how many of you would like to be a teacher? And I was the only one who rose my hand. And kind of separated myself from the group, and everyone wanted, they wanted to be other things, this and that and the other. But I knew in 2nd grade that I wanted to be a teacher. And as I got older, my reasons for becoming a teacher became more and more prevalent. And it was about high school, like the end of middle school, high school, when I realized that I wanted to be a teacher for reasons that I never thought or imagined I would want to be a teacher. I wanted to become a teacher so that students would not have some of the same teaching experiences that I had growing up. And I was blessed to have a male teacher, a positive male role model in 2nd grade. Not to say that I didn't have other male role models. I came from a 2-parent household, brothers and a sister, but I was blessed in that sense, and not a lot of people are. The times have changed. A 1-person household is not so taboo anymore, or not something that's uncommon. But I wanted to make sure that students had more positive experiences, especially young Hispanic males that came from the background that I came from. I grew up in South San Diego, literally, I would say 2-3 miles from the Mexican border. And there were a lot of drugs, a lot of gangs, a lot of negative things. And I was one of the blessed ones who was able to make it out. And I figured, if I can do it, being surrounded by that, having that stuff in close family and just everywhere you looked, as soon as you stepped out, then who's to say that other people can? And who's to say that other people cannot be given the light or shown the light into something like education, and to be able to give back to their respective communities and their respective families and households.
That's fantastic. That's a fantastic story to be able to relate to students the way that you can on that level. I think that's something that a lot of teachers can't do with the challenges that some of their students are going through, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I moved, our family moved to Arizona back in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
2005, that's when the market got crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, my wife and I had just got married and we were searching for apartments. We found some apartments literally 1 year later, 2005. We went to go look at those same apartments,
Mm-hmm.
and they had been turned into condos. And a 2-bedroom was going for $545,000 in San Diego.
Wow.
Granted, it was an apartment complex the year before.
Uh-huh.
And that's when we realized, you know what, let's make a move somewhere else. So we made the move to Arizona, started our family there, raised our family. And I didn't look like the typical student who I was teaching in Arizona. But there were that small pocket of students who were able to relate to me because I looked and sounded like them. And I can relate to students pretty well. I'm a people person. Most educators are people persons.
Go with it.
And so I'm able to read people. I'm able to read the room. I can adjust on the fly and do things like that. So I know that what to say, when to say it, and how to say it for any given audience. And I've always enjoyed being looked up to by students who might not have the same opportunities regardless of how they look or what have you, race, gender, doesn't matter. But knowing that I can be a positive person for them, somebody that they can say, hey, you know what? Things aren't that bad. Things aren't that bad. We can all get through this. And what a more perfect time to talk about that than
took the words
like
right out of my mouth. Right? You took the words right out of my mouth, Gabriel. So you're an EdTech specialist right now.
Correct.
So what was your journey there? I mean, what grade level did you teach middle school? What was your?
I taught fourth grade. I taught sixth grade. I taught seventh grade math. And then I taught fifth grade for quite some time. I was actually an assistant principal for 2 years, two separate years, not consecutive at different campuses. And I quickly found out that administration was not for me at the time. Maybe, who knows, 2 or 3 years down the road, I might chew on those words a little bit differently. But I quickly found out at that time where we were in our marriage with our kids that I realized, you know what, I'm spending a lot of time with other people's kids and not my own or my wife. So I quickly found out that wasn't for me. And that's when I got into fifth grade, and I taught fifth grade for quite some time. And the educational technology specialist at the district that I was in, he would always throw things at me and I just chewed him up. Like, all right, let's do it. The district is looking at possible interactive whiteboards. Yeah, I'll take one. He wanted to do like a pilot program. Boom. I would do anything he would throw at me. I would take and I would run it through its courses. That's awesome. Then from that kind of built a relationship between him and I. And after about a year and a half of doing stuff with him, I presented it to the board with him on a couple of different initiatives in that for pilot programs that him and I kind of got into. And about a year and a half later, my door opened to my classroom in the middle of class. In walks him. His name is Nick Trachis. What's up, Nick? How you doing, man? Nick? His director at the time, Nicole Steele, the director of public relations, my wife, and my principal, all walk in at the same time to my classroom. I thought, I'm either getting fired or my wife is serving me with divorce papers in front of everyone right now.
She brought backup.
And lo and behold, I was being awarded the 2011 Arizona State Teacher of the Year for the Arizona Technology and Education Association. Wow. So I was awarded that. It was a big deal. It was a big deal for the district. The EdTech specialist, Nick, he was a one-person department. So there was literally one of him for 9 campuses and 2 virtual campuses. The following year, that was I believe at the end of January, beginning of February, when I was awarded that. And sure enough, May, they opened up a second position. I applied for it and I got it. And that's how I got in. And I haven't looked back since. Not to say that I don't want to be in the classroom, but I think I found what I really like to do. And if I can make more of a positive impact on a broader, larger audience, then I'm all for it. So
That's
I'm not
awesome.
looking back at that.
So how many years total?
I've been an educational technology specialist for going on 9 years, something like that. But
So how
I've
much?
taught.
How much?
I've been in education since I graduated high school. When I graduated high school, I became a paraprofessional.
Okay.
Did that through college. The Friday that I graduated college, the following Monday, I was a substitute teacher.
So you've been in education your whole life.
My whole life.
Your whole
My
life.
entire life. All I know is education. And through college, I also detailed cars. I tutored. I used to DJ on my own. But all I know is
you're creative
education.
at heart, it seems like. I mean, and I listen to your podcast. You can tell that you've got that creative spirit. That's fantastic.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So it sounds like you've ridden a lot of highs. You're at a great place now. It sounds like, I don't want to make that judgment, but have you ever, be at the Burned In Teacher podcast, we talk about burnout on here, right? Has there ever been a point in your career where you're like, I don't know, and maybe you did know, but you were just, you were struggling?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have peaks and valleys all the time. And I definitely hit one of those valleys, I would say about 2008, 2009-ish. That was when, the market started going down and, homes started depreciating in value, and at the time in the district that I was in, our insurance premiums kept going up, and they kept saying, well, the good thing is we're not taking any pay cuts. Well, actually we are. You keep jacking up our insurance, and, me covering a family of 4, it's quite a ding. It's quite a ding. So there's always that, grading papers every night, having 2 kids, not to say that that I regret having 2 kids with my wife and everything, but they could be draining. They could be very draining. There's a lot of time and energy put into it. So I've definitely hit those valleys at times throughout my career. And there's times where I get into those lulls. And so I'm not immune like anyone else. We're not immune to any of that. It's going to happen at some point, and at times at multiple points throughout your career. So it's definitely something that you are going to have to learn how to struggle through, to get through. And when you come out the other end, you need to remember what it is that got you out to the other end, on the other side of that fence. That way, when it happens, you know what worked and what didn't. Like they say, fool me once, shame on me. On you, absolutely. I'm sorry. And fool me twice. If you can get under my skin twice, shame on me.
Yeah. So I know my symptoms when I start to hit around a burnout, and my listeners know that I still, to this day, everybody goes through rounds, like you just said. Even the burnout coach that goes through burnout went through a severe round of burnout about this time last year. And I myself am not ashamed to say that at that point I was ashamed. I'm thinking, how could you be burned out? This is what you do. But tell me, how can you tell when you are starting to ride that valley?
Waking up in the middle of the night, and the first thing that I think of is work or a project or something that I have to do. That's definitely a sign. When that becomes the last thing you think of before you go to bed and the first thing you think of when you wake up, that is a sign for me. Another thing that I notice as well is I can tune out of conversations because I'm not in the moment. I tend to trying to look for the correct term. Preoccupied. I'm preoccupied. There can be a lot of head nodding. There can be walking out of the meeting thinking, what did we even talk about? I don't even recall. Or I think the telltale sign for me, and possibly many, many people who are thinking about this as well, is when you get home to your driveway and you remember, or you cannot remember or recall how you got there.
You and me, brother. Those are my symptoms too, because I can be a workaholic.
Yeah.
That's
And
all
it definitely shows that you're passionate about things and you want to be there to help, especially in the positions that you and I are in.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to stop and think about the people who are around you
Mm-hmm.
and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And yourself. Because if you can't be your best you
Mm-hmm.
for the people in your household or your friends, your family, your loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like an energy. You're going to give it out and that's all you're going to get back.
So true. So true. I mean, I feel like you and if Jeff was in here right now, my husband, who is a principal, by the way, he would be like, that's you. Did you do? You just get wrapped up in it, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what are your strategies?
I'm big on lists.
Mm.
I like things. I like SMART goals. For those of you who don't know what a SMART goal is, it's an acronym. Google it. Or if you're a Microsoft Edge user, Bing it. But I like making small attainable things that I could check off of a list.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working on a project, I like to scaffold that project into little mini bullet points that I can get through.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I rely on a lot is, I will disconnect. I like mowing the lawn. I like detailing the cars in the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my kids stories, and I think I mentioned this a little bit ago. I used to detail cars,
Yeah, you did.
and there's something about doing a little bit of physical labor that really, really just puts you in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're dealing with the 3000 PSI pressure washer, you don't have time to forget what you're doing and accidentally put the nozzle on wrong, and you've just created a projectile that's going to shoot into the neighbor's yard or blast your hand off. So I like doing things like that. I like cutting the grass. I'll throw on my headphones, listen to some podcasts, and I listen to a lot of comedy. I'm blessed enough to be a youngest of 5. The next youngest brother down the list, him and I are 9 years apart. So I kind of grew up as an only child in that sense. But because of that, I grew up with their music. I grew up with the things that they enjoyed. And one of the things that my family was into was comedy. Comedy
so
albums
great.
And things like that. So if I'm not going to watch or listen to anything else, I will stream comedy albums on Netflix, on my Spotify, on anything I can, because that stuff just takes me out.
Yeah.
It takes me out of whatever I'm doing. So
that's my husband too. He loves to listen to comedy podcasts. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, when I was in 5th, 6th grade, I used to talk about, George Carlin and people like that. And a 12-year-old, they don't know who any of these people are.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, did you watch Cheers last night? They're like, Cheers, what is that? And that's just the stuff I grew up on, because that's, my older brothers, they put me onto that stuff. So I do a lot of that. I enjoy doing things with my wife and my kids. We're on a big Pokemon thing right now. I mean, we go out and we Pokemon hunt like crazy.
That's great. That's a great outlet for right now, right?
Yeah, especially
you're out
for
and about,
them.
but you're safe.
I mean, if we think that we're stressed, I can't imagine being 14 years old in a global pandemic.
Yeah.
I can't, just realizing who you are and who you're becoming and your feelings, your emotions, you're going through puberty. You don't know if you like the same sex, the opposite sex. You're going through a lot, and then top it off, you're in a global pandemic. If you have health issues like asthma, then there's that compiled on top of it. There's anxiety, stress. It's just, people need to find something positive. So if you want your car washed, your lawn mowed, look for me on a stressed out day and I'll take it.
I love to sweat it out. I mean, that's why I get up every morning and work out. If I don't, that just is a way to get me going and sweat out the stress, right? Sweat out the poison.
Yeah, exactly.
So I asked you before, one reason that I really wanted you to come on too was because you are an EdTech specialist. You are seeing this every day. You're with teachers. And one thing that I've seen come up over and over again as stressors in my community, one of two things is the lack of student engagement with the virtual students who are learning from home, or if teachers are in fact teaching fully remote. Do you have any strategies that you have seen work really well with your teachers?
I have, and
Mhm.
there's a couple of teachers that I'm working with, and one of the I'm going to give you a tool if that's okay.
Perfect.
So my two best friends right now are Nearpod
Mm. hmm
and Flipgrid.
Yeah.
Those are I'm actually wearing my Student Voice Flipgrid shirt as we
Yes.
speak. So those are my two best friends right now. Those are the two that I'm promoting, and those are the two that I'm doing a lot of support with my teachers right now. And here's why. Nearpod can take whatever content you are trying to teach and make it interactive. I can throw it on student devices. I can do it live where I'm controlling the presentation. And then I can do it in a student paced mode where it becomes homework or asynchronous.
hmm
You know, if there's two words that we should cancel into 2020, it's asynchronous and synchronous. I mean, those are burned out. No pun intended.
Right.
But those are the two tools that I think teachers can really maximize student learning and engagement with,
hmm
and take a little bit off the plate when it comes to grading.
Mm.
For example, in Nearpod, I can create a self-grading quiz,
hmm
and it does the grading for me. It tells me when the student logged in. It gives me their data. I now have created a formative assessment, and I can now take anecdotal notes based on that lesson.
hmm
In Flipgrid, I can hear what the students are processing. I can see what they're going through. I could see where they're making the mistakes. If I'm a math teacher, Flipgrid has a very easy to use whiteboard where the students can annotate on their screen.
Mm.
So if I'm teaching, let's say, slope, rise over run, I can give the students a problem and they will work it out on Flipgrid. And as they're working it out, they are telling me
hmm
what they're doing.
hmm
I'm now listening to their thinking and their processing.
hmm
And that's a component that's really missing right now from formative assessments.
Right.
Formative assessments tend to be a couple questions, but I'm not
Mhm.
concerned with the answer. I want to know the process.
Mhm.
Can you explain your thinking, your process to me? I
Mhm.
can care less that the answer's for. You can Google that. You can ask Alexa. You can ask Google. You can ask Siri. They're going to give you the answer. I want to know the process that you went through. So those
Mhm.
are the two tools that I would definitely recommend to any teacher. And if you have any questions on how to use them, best practices, examples, please reach out to me.
Mhm.
I can definitely help you out. And the other thing that I will definitely tell all educators right now and from here on out is less is more.
Mm. That was going to be my question, because what I can hear my teacher saying is, so I've got to put together this presentation. I've got to connect it to Nearpod. I have to go through every single one of these answers. Is that
Mhm.
something that they should do every day?
Not necessarily. You
Okay.
don't have to do that every day. You could teach one day
Mm-hmm.
and just have them soak it all in.
Mm-hmm.
You can have them reflect on it on a Flipgrid video the next day, and
Mm-hmm.
that can be their assignment, a 30-second recording on what they remember, what they recall, what they're still confused about,
Mm-hmm.
in a low stress environment where the videos are not accessible by
Mm-hmm.
anyone else other than the teacher.
Right.
And now you have notes, and you can go back and forth with the student. You can obviously chat with them and do some one-on-one tutoring with them. But
Mm-hmm.
when I say less is more, I mean, I hate to say this, but I am sick and tired of seeing homework that is 25 questions.
Yes. Amen.
Why are you giving students that much homework?
And you're
To
giving
me,
yourself that much work, right?
yeah.
I mean,
If don't give anything out as homework that you're not ready to grade and turn around on the spot for every single one of your
mm-hmm.
students with appropriate and timely feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a student and they can't do the first 2 or 3, why in the heck am I going to kill them with another 22? Here,
Mm-hmm.
two things are going to happen, or one of two things. Number one, they're going to do everything wrong, and then you're going to have to turn around and reteach.
Mm-hmm.
Or number two, they will have learned how to do it incorrectly, and it is now ingrained in them. And
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing more difficult as an educator than to try to unteach someone how to do something and have them teach it and for them to learn it again a second time.
Right.
Number one, that's a whole nother day's work. And number two, try to have a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, or 10-year-old, or 8-year-old try to unlearn something.
Right.
A lot of people will say that practice makes perfect, and I disagree with that 1000%. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Practice makes permanent. If I practice dribbling a basketball incorrectly for half a season, that's it. It's going to take me 2-3 times as long to unlearn it and relearn how to do it correctly. So homework, if you can crop it down to 1 or 2 questions, or better yet, give them the solution. And I'm going to keep using math as an example, because if there's a subject in which you can do this with quickly, like tomorrow, you could do it with math. Don't ask your students to solve 2 or 3 questions or equations or inequalities. Give them an example that is solved incorrectly, and have them explain on Flipgrid where where they went wrong and how to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Or have them pinpoint it, or have them circle it. Things like that require a lot more brain work and require a lot more processing and really understanding and knowledge of the content than solving 15 equations.
Love it. I remember doing that with my 3rd graders, and it was the most engaging because they wanted to find somebody else's incorrect process rather than always, criticizing their own incorrect answers. And this was somebody random. It wasn't somebody from the other student. But even my 1st graders, like we would, learning how to pick apart a sentence that somebody else wrote incorrectly, as a class, they just really enjoy finding those mistakes. It's almost fun for them on a certain level.
Yeah, give them the red pen, right?
I have another question too, that concerns student engagement. So what is your take on when a student doesn't show? Because I have a lot of teachers who are really feeling they're wearing that their student isn't showing up. And, some administrators are putting a lot of pressure on the teachers to make sure that the students show up. But how do you feel about, what do you see in your school, and what do you see teachers doing that's working and not working when a student just simply doesn't show?
Well, a lot of times the student's not showing for a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
That reason could be personal. You never want to assume that they're not showing because they don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, especially in some of the schools, the schools that I service, especially the high school, when this pandemic first started, these kids were not showing up because they had to pick up a job to help their parents out because their dad got furloughed or something. So these kids had to pick up a job. So they were not showing for that reason. And I don't know, call it what you want, but I think that's a pretty darn good reason not to show up to class.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take care of that family. And the other reason is maybe you gave them a reason not to show up. I don't like when teachers call out students in front of their peers in a public setting, like a classroom. Take me out. If I'm mouthing off in your class, wait till after class, or pull me to the hallway when there's some independent practice going on or something, or pull me aside in the hallway during passing period. That's going to have a much more a much more positive effect on me than calling me out in front of my peers. Nevertheless, calling me out in front of my peers in a Zoom room. A lot of teachers and some districts, some teachers, some schools are requiring for the cameras to be on. And you can't call students out for not turning their cameras on, especially if you know them, because sometimes they don't want to show what's in the background. They don't want to show that they share a bedroom with 3 or 4 other siblings, so at times you cannot take it personal. You have to do a little bit of digging and just, continue doing things that will make them want to come to the classroom. Call them out for something positive. Maybe have them present something. Maybe have them talk about something that that they're good at. That way they relate that Zoom call to a positive experience. And maybe they won't turn on their camera for a week and a half, but they'll be there. And who knows, in a week and a half, 2 weeks, maybe they'll turn it on. But if you do that, if you live by the motto of less is more, give them digestible pieces that they can chew. It's like, it's like serving your kids dinner. if you approach them with this huge plate absolutely full of Brussels sprouts and kale and other things that they might not like, or it's kind of difficult to digest,
Mm-hmm.
it's visually, it's not appealing to them. They're
Right.
already freaked out, like, I can't leave the dinner table unless I finish this. This is a lot for me to take in. If you serve them just a little bit, just enough, you eat with your eyes first.
Right.
And a lot of times
Or
the students do that.
you can sneak that spinach into a smoothie.
Oh, what? Now you're talking my language there.
Right?
Pineapples and
If we're
peas.
gonna use a
Oh,
food analogy, now's the time, right?
man, that's right. That's right. So
So
I hope I answered your question.
yeah, you really did. I think it's simple and challenging at the same time, because it really does come back to the stories that we're telling ourselves. And when we have these unconscious biases about what we think they're doing or why we think they're not doing something, that's not only unfair to the student, that's unfair to us, because then we're putting undue pressure on ourselves.
Yeah.
Number one, to feel guilty that, that they're not there, but then also, being almost like holding it against them that they're not there. And I'm not saying that some students aren't just not showing up because they just don't feel like it, but that comes back then to the relationships too that you have, and realizing you can really only control so much. You really can.
Yeah, you really can.
I mean,
and that's something that you should not lose sleep over.
Mm-hmm,
No.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gabriele, I have another question for you.
Go for it.
When you talk to your teachers that you're working with, how many teachers do you work with, do you think, on a daily, weekly basis, give or take?
I work anywhere between about, 10 to 20 teachers a week at my various campuses. Mm-hmm.
How are they doing?
It's a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I don't have a lot of teachers right now that are like, I'm loving this. I could do this, for the rest of my career. There are some that are just, their straw above the water is the only thing that's keeping them out in right now.
Mm-hmm.
There are some who are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, okay, I'm drowning, but things are getting a little bit better. And there are some who are just living period by period.
Mm-hmm.
They are just they're struggling, and that's where I come in to help with co-teaching and co-planning. And I met with a teacher today, ironically, about Nearpod. We did a Nearpod lesson last week. We did a little recap today. How did things go? How was it for you? How do you think the students perceived it? How did they do on their little quiz you gave them? And what would you do differently? And she was really intrigued and wanted to do a little bit more. So we're doing some more planning sessions in that, but that's what teachers need right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looked at as, well, actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. I am in no way an administrator, nor am I an evaluator. And I think that's what sets my role apart from others. When, let's say, a specialist or a curriculum specialist walks into a classroom, a lot of times they're perceived as administration. They're here to judge me. They're here to tell me that what I'm doing wrong. I don't ever want a teacher to think that of me. I am there for them. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to support you.
Yeah. So when you're working with these teachers that you say, have that straw that's keeping them afloat, what do you think is one simple shift that they can make? I know you say, keep it simple. I say it too. Keep it so simple. But that's very relative. And some teachers tell themselves a story that if I keep it simple, that means I'm a bad teacher, because good teachers are working all the time and always giving of everything that they have. What is one simple shift, one thing that they could either put on their to-do list or take off of that to-do list that could make a huge difference in a day or two, or even tomorrow?
I would definitely say to put on your list to ask for help. Do not be afraid to ask for help. As educators, some of us carry a lot of pride with us, and we don't want to ask for help because we don't want to make it seem like we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And by putting that on your list, whoever you get to help you can help you take things off of your list. So I would definitely say, there's power in numbers, and the smartest person in the room is the room itself. So when you ask for help, you don't know how much people could contribute to what you're doing, to your cause, to your lessons, to this, that, and the other. And I would also say, don't be afraid to join join a couple of different PLNs and add to your PLN. There are Facebook groups for anything and everything you can imagine on this planet. There are Twitter chats going on every night, multiple times a night for different subject areas, different grade levels, administration, you name it. There's different ways. There's podcasts. Get lost in a couple of educational podcasts like the Burned In Teacher or the EdTech Bites podcast on your way to and from work, or while you work out, or on your jog, or on your walk.
Right? Best advice ever. You know what I call teachers who say, that they don't want to ask for help, that they can do it all themselves. I call that the agent of same, named Superhero Sam.
Oh.
Because I think, sometimes teachers are told by their administrators or authors or speakers, whatever, you are superheroes. You are a superhero. No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, you're not. I don't believe you are. I think you're a human being that has limits, right?
Even Batman had Robin.
Right?
Even Batman had Robin.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, Gabriele, tell everybody how they can find you and learn more about you and your podcast.
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at EdTech Bites, and that's BITES. You can find the podcast on any of the podcast platforms out there, your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher Radio, Spotify. And all you got to do is search EdTech Bites. You can follow the website /blog at edtechbites.com. And I'm happy to connect with you. I'm happy to give you the ins and outs of some of the tools and pedagogy and different strategies that I can help you with. And I'm always down to share some recipes as well, because I love to cook. That's one thing I love to do.
It's so great. I was listening to your keynote, to your 2020,
my
21
beginning of the year keynote.
Yeah, that chicken salad, dude.
That chicken salad was ridiculous.
It sounded ridiculous.
So for those of you who didn't tune in, that episode, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. I believe it was number 72, but it's Hatch green chili chicken salad. I stumbled across a Hatch green chili roasted chicken, just tore it to pieces, made a chicken salad out of it with some crackers. Oh, it was delicious. Yeah. And I did that keynote this year. I did another one last year with spaghetti carbonara, if you're not sure what carbonara is. And every year I'll be doing another beginning of the year keynote.
I love it. Well, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful to be part of the EPN with you. You're just very knowledgeable, very helpful. I can tell you have a good heart for teachers and kids.
Thank you. Likewise. I appreciate what you're doing and changing that burned out to burned in.
Well, we got to talk about it if we're going to change it, right? So I appreciate you being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, you can head over to burnedinteacher.com, where you can access the entire vault of Burned In Teacher podcast episodes and more information about ways I want to help you go from burned out teacher to burned in human. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would be so grateful if you would head over to iTunes and leave a review and a rating about the Burned In Teacher podcast. Until next time, take a deep breath, because you just took another step to becoming a burned in teacher. Burn on.